My name is Khaled. Until a few weeks ago, honestly, the most exciting thing in my life was finding a perfectly ripe mango at the Khan El Khalili market in Cairo. I spent my days surrounded by dust and history, helping my uncle in his small antique shop. It was a good life, but a quiet one. I dreamed of the adventures I read about in old books, stories of pharaohs and hidden tombs. I wanted my own story. I just didn't realize my story would find me, rolled up in a forgotten clay jar and smelling faintly of cinnamon and sand. It was a papyrus scroll, so old it felt like dried leaves, but the ink on it was a strange, shimmering gold that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at it. The scroll wasn't written in any language I knew, not hieroglyphics, not Arabic, not Greek. The symbols were like little constellations, swirling stars and crescent moons that formed a map. My uncle, a man who could tell you the dynasty of a potsherd just by sniffing it, had no idea what it was. He warned me to leave it alone, calling it a djinn's trick or a forger's prank. But I couldn't. The map called to me. At night I'd swear the golden ink glowed softly, projecting a faint image of the western desert onto my bedroom ceiling. It was showing me a specific spot, a place far from any known ruins, deep in the sea of sand where few people ever dared to go. I knew with a certainty that made my heart pound that this was it. This was my adventure. Packing was easy. A sturdy backpack, a few liters of water, dried dates, a compass, and the mysterious scroll. I told my uncle I was going on a short camping trip to the Fayoum Oasis, a small lie that felt heavy on my tongue. The bus ride out of Cairo was a blur of noise and color, but soon the city gave way to the endless, silent expanse of the desert. The sun was a relentless hammer, and the silence was so complete it roared in my ears. For 3 days I followed the star-like symbols on the map, my compass spinning uselessly whenever I held it too close to the papyrus. The desert was beautiful and terrifying, a place that could swallow you whole and leave no trace. But I wasn't scared. I felt like I was being pulled forward by an invisible string. On the 4th day, I found it. It wasn't a grand pyramid or a hidden temple, it was just a jagged crack in the side of a rocky mesa, almost completely hidden by a curtain of wind-blown sand. It was exactly where the scroll said it would be. The entrance was dark and unwelcoming, and a strange cool breeze drifted out, carrying the scent of something ancient and powerful, like ozone and old magic. This was the moment of truth. My hand trembled as I clutched the scroll. Was I a fool chasing a fantasy? Or was I an explorer about to step into the unknown? Taking a deep breath, I pushed aside the sand and stepped out of the Egyptian sun and into the waiting darkness of the cave. The inside of the cave was surprisingly cool. The air was still and heavy, and the only sound was the crunch of my boots on the gravelly floor. I clicked on my flashlight, its beam cutting a nervous path through the immense darkness. The walls weren't rough stone like I expected, they were smooth, almost polished, and covered in the same swirling star-like symbols from the scroll. As my light passed over them, the symbols seemed to absorb the beam, and for a split second they glowed with a soft, ethereal light of their own before fading back into the darkness. It was like the cave was alive and I was walking through its belly. I felt a mix of awe and a healthy dose of what have I gotten myself into. I walked deeper, following a path that spiraled gently downward. The air grew colder and the whispering started. It wasn't a human voice, but more like the rustling of 1,000 pages or the sigh of the wind through ancient reeds. The whispers seemed to come from the walls themselves, a language I couldn't understand but felt in my bones. It spoke of suns, of sand, of a world waiting just beyond a veil. The scroll in my hand began to grow warm, its golden light pulsing in time with the whispers. It was no longer just a map, it was a key, and I was bringing it to the lock. The feeling of being pulled forward grew stronger, almost irresistible. After what felt like hours, the tunnel opened into a vast circular chamber. In the center of the room stood a single, towering crystal, easily the size of a car. It pulsed with a gentle inner light, illuminating the chamber in a soft blue glow. The walls here were a mosaic of the strange symbols, all shining brightly now, their light flowing in streams towards the central crystal. The whispers grew louder, coalescing into a single, resonant hum that made the very air vibrate. I knew this was the heart of the magic. I cautiously approached the crystal, holding the scroll out in front of me as if it were a shield. The moment the papyrus got close, the hum intensified into a roar. A blinding flash of golden light erupted from the scroll, striking the crystal with incredible force. The chamber lit up like 1,000 suns, and I threw my arm over my eyes, stumbling backward. The light wasn't hot. It was pure energy, a wave of magic that washed over me, through me, and seemed to rewrite the very air around me. The stone floor beneath my feet felt like it was dissolving into sand, and the solid walls of the cave shimmered and vanished like a heat mirage. The roaring hum became a symphony of chimes and rushing wind. I felt weightless, like I was falling and floating at the same time. The world dissolved into a whirlwind of gold and blue light, and then just as suddenly as it began, everything went black. I woke up with a mouthful of sand. Not the gritty, familiar sand of the western desert, but something finer, almost like powdered sugar. I pushed myself up, my head pounding, and blinked. And then I blinked again because my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Above me, in a sky the color of a deep turquoise, hung not one but two suns. One was a brilliant, familiar yellow-white, while the other was smaller and burned with a soft silver light. Shimmering iridescent dunes stretched in every direction, their sands glowing with a faint inner light, casting pastel shadows of pink and purple. This was not Egypt. This was somewhere else entirely. A city rose from the sands in the distance, a place straight out of a dream. Its towers were made of what looked like spun glass and polished white stone, spiraling towards the two suns like graceful fingers. Strange winged creatures with jeweled scales soared between the spires, their cries echoing like music. The air was clean and sweet, carrying the scent of exotic blossoms and something like fresh rain. My mind was reeling. The scroll, the cave, the light. It had all been real. It wasn't a dream. I'd stumbled through a doorway between worlds and landed in this impossible, beautiful land. I was terrified, but a bigger part of me was buzzing with a wild sense of wonder. "You look lost." The voice was soft and melodic. I spun around to see a young woman standing a few feet away. She had kind eyes the color of moss and long dark hair braided with silver threads. She wore simple flowing robes of deep blue, and in her hand, she held a milky white orb that pulsed with a gentle, steady light. She didn't look threatening. In fact, her presence was calming, like a cool breeze on a hot day. She smiled. A small, knowing smile that suggested seeing people appear out of thin air wasn't a new experience for her. Travelers from the other side often arrive with that expression, a mix of confusion and awe. Where am I?" I stammered, my voice hoarse. I was in a cave." She nodded, her gaze patient. "You were. And now you are here. This is the land of Zicola, and the city you see is Zero, the city of first light." She gestured with her glowing orb. "My name is Asil, I am a healer, and you, Khaled from the land of one sun, have arrived at a very interesting and very dangerous time." The way she said my name sent a chill down my spine. She already knew who I was. The magic of this place ran deeper than just shimmering sands and twin suns. I had a feeling my adventure was just getting started. Asil led me through the glowing dunes toward the magnificent city of Zero. The glass-like towers seemed to hum with a quiet energy as we got closer, and the air buzzed with the gentle flapping of the winged creatures I'd seen from afar. "You must understand," Asil said, her voice serious as we walked. "Zicola operates on its own rules, rules woven into the sand and sky. Our two suns, Solara and Lunai, govern our time. They dictate the flow of magic and life." She explained that the barrier between my world and hers was usually impenetrable. But every few centuries the paths of the worlds align, making passage possible for a short time for someone holding a key, like my scroll. "That light you saw, the portal you came through, it's a temporary tear in reality," she continued, her glowing orb pulsing in rhythm with her words. "It will only remain open until the great eclipse." I must have looked confused because she stopped and pointed to the sky. "In 7 days, Lunai, our silver sun, will pass directly in front of a sacred point in the sky known as the Eye of Return. This eclipse will seal the gateway between our worlds. If you are not at the eye when it happens, the path home will vanish. You will be trapped here, in Zicola, forever." The word forever echoed in the vast open space, suddenly making this beautiful world feel like a cage. The rules didn't stop there. Asil explained that Zicola's magic was tied to life force. The creatures, the plants, even the cities were all part of a delicate balance, but there were things that sought to disrupt it. "The sand wraiths," she whispered, her expression turning grim. "They are creatures of shadow and hunger, born from the darkest corners of the desert. They are drawn to those who don't belong, to the energy you carry from your world." Great. So not only was I on a deadline, but I was also a walking beacon for soul-sucking monsters. My simple adventure was quickly turning into a race for my life. All I wanted was to explore, but now I had to survive. We entered the city of Zero and it was even more breathtaking up close. The streets were paved with smooth opalescent stone and floating gardens drifted lazily between the crystalline towers. The people of Zero moved with a quiet grace, their clothes shimmering with subtle light. But amidst all this beauty, a seal's warning hung heavy in the air. The journey to the Eye of Return is long and dangerous, she concluded, her moss-green eyes meeting mine. It lies deep within the whispering canyons. You cannot make this journey alone, Khaled. I will guide you, but you must be brave, and you must be quick. Time in Zicola, especially for you, is running out. Our journey began the next day. We left the safety of Zero on the backs of two magnificent creatures called griffins, majestic beasts with the body of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle. They were proud and intelligent, and honestly, soaring through the turquoise sky between two suns was the most exhilarating thing I had ever done. Below us, the shimmering deserts gave way to vast crystalline forests and rivers that flowed with liquid light. Zicola was a world of endless wonders, a place that felt more like a painting than reality. But you know, the beauty was deceptive, hiding dangers that were just as real as the griffins we rode. The sand wraiths found us on our second night. We had made camp in the shelter of some glowing rock formations when a sudden chill fell over the desert. The light from our campfire flickered and died, and the two suns, setting on the horizon, were blotted out by a swirling black mist. Figures began to form from the sand, tall skeletal beings with empty sockets that glowed with a malevolent red light. They moved without a sound, gliding over the dunes toward us. My heart hammered against my ribs. A seal raised her orb, which flared with a brilliant white light, pushing the shadows back. "Stay in the light, Khaled!" she yelled. The wraiths hissed, recoiling from the orb's purity. It was a terrifying dance of light and shadow under the alien sky. We didn't just face monsters. Our path took us to the floating city of Eridor, an entire metropolis built on a massive, levitating island of rock. To gain passage across it, we had to solve a riddle posed by the city's guardians, ancient automatons made of bronze and gears. The riddle was about the two suns and the nature of time, a complex puzzle of logic and observation. I remembered my uncle teaching me to look for patterns, to see the story behind the object. Working with a seal, we pieced together the clues in the automaton's words and the celestial patterns above, finally speaking the answer that granted us safe passage. It felt like a test from one of my old history books had come to life. Our journey was a blur of incredible sights and heart-stopping challenges. We navigated the whispering canyons where the rocks themselves spoke in riddles, trying to lead travelers astray with echoes of their own fears and doubts. I had to learn to trust a seal's guidance over the sound of my own insecurities whispering back at me. We crossed the River of Stars on a boat made of woven moonlight, piloted by a ferryman who spoke only in song. With each challenge we overcame, I felt less like a lost tourist and more like a part of this world. I was learning its rhythms, its magic, and its dangers. But the eclipse was drawing closer, a constant reminder that my time here was finite. As we traveled, I learned more about a seal. She wasn't just a healer, she was a lore keeper, a student of Zicola's ancient history and its connection to other worlds. She spoke of the veil between realities and the rare moments when it thinned. One evening, as we rested near a grove of trees that dripped glowing sap, she told me something that changed everything. "You are not the first to cross over, Khaled," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the glowing orb cradled in her hands. "But you are the most important." I asked her what she meant. How could a boy from a Cairo antique shop be important to a magical world? Her story tumbled out, a secret she had carried for a long time. Generations ago, one of her ancestors, a great explorer from Zicola, had managed to cross the veil. He had found his way to Earth, to my world. He fell in love with the land of a single sun, with its vibrant cultures and its deep, layered history. He spent years there, living among the people of ancient Egypt. He was fascinated by their stories, their gods, and their connection to the stars. He learned their language and their writing, and before he returned to Zicola, he left behind a record of his journey, a map, drawn in the magical ink of his homeland, on a piece of Egyptian papyrus. "That scroll you found," a seal said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It was his, a message in a bottle, cast across an ocean of worlds. My family has been watching the veil for centuries, waiting. We believe he left it as a promise that one day, someone with a curious heart and a brave spirit would find it and complete the circle." She looked at me, and I finally understood the knowing smile she'd given me when we first met. She wasn't just helping a lost traveler, she was fulfilling a prophecy, a family legacy that stretched across dimensions. My discovery of the scroll hadn't been an accident at all. This revelation shifted the ground beneath my feet. My journey was no longer just about my own survival. It was part of a much larger story, a connection between two worlds that had been waiting to be rekindled. Asil believed my arrival was a sign, a chance to strengthen the bond between Zicola and Earth, to share knowledge and stories. She believed the energy I carried from my world could help heal parts of Zicola that had been weakened by the sand wraiths. I wasn't just a visitor anymore. I had a purpose here. And that purpose made the choice that lay ahead of me, the choice at the Eye of Return, infinitely more complicated. We reached the Eye of Return on the 7th day, just as the silver sun, Lunai, began its slow journey across the sky. The Eye wasn't a place so much as a phenomenon, it was a massive canyon, but at its center, the air itself shimmered and warped, creating a perfect circular rift that looked like a giant, unblinking eye staring into the cosmos. Streams of colored light flowed into it from the surrounding cliffs, which were carved with the familiar star-like symbols. This was the lock, the gateway, the place where two realities touched. The energy here was immense, making the air crackle and my teeth hum. The griffins landed us on a high ledge, unwilling to get any closer to the unstable magic. As Lunai moved closer to the center of the eye, the light from the rift began to pulse, growing brighter and more intense. "It is time, Khaled," Asil said, her voice tight with emotion. "The gateway is opening. When the eclipse is total, the path will be clear. It will only last for a few moments." She pointed to the center of the shimmering vortex. Through the swirling energy, I could almost see it. A faint image, like a mirage, of a sun-baked desert landscape under a single brilliant sun. I could smell the hot sand and dust of home. It was Egypt. The way back was real. It was right there. But just as hope surged in my chest, a dark tide rose to meet it. From the depths of the canyon, the sand wraiths emerged, drawn by the immense power of the opening gateway. There were dozens of them, more than I had ever seen, their red eyes burning with hunger. They swarmed up the canyon walls, their shadowy forms blocking our path to the rift. They wanted the energy of the portal, and they wanted the energy of the traveler from another world. They were a final, desperate barrier between me and my choice. Asil raised her orb, its light flaring, but she was just one person against a tide of darkness. The eclipse began. Lunai's silver disk slid over the focal point of the eye, and the world was plunged into a strange, ethereal twilight. The rift in the center of the canyon flared, stabilizing into a perfect shimmering doorway. Home was calling, but the wraiths were upon us, their chilling whispers filling the air. This was the final test. I wouldn't let Asil fight them alone. I grabbed a heavy crystal-tipped staff we had acquired on our journey and stood beside her, my back to the portal. We were a tiny island of light in a sea of encroaching shadows. The choice was just feet away, but first, we had to survive the darkness. The light from Asil's orb pulsed, holding the sand wraiths at bay, but they were too many. For everyone that dissolved in the light, two more surged forward. The portal to my world shimmered behind me, a perfect image of the desert I knew so well. I could feel the pull of home, a deep, instinctual longing for the familiar sky, the scent of the Nile, the hustle of Cairo. My old life was waiting. I could step through that shimmering curtain and wake up in the sand, the whole incredible journey feeling like a fever dream. I could return to my uncle's shop, my books, my quiet existence with a story no one would ever believe. But as I fought beside Asil, I looked at her determined face, at the beautiful, magical world of Zicola laid out before me, and I felt a different kind of pull. I thought of the griffins, the floating cities, the rivers of liquid light. I thought of the purpose Asil had spoken of being a bridge between two worlds, of fulfilling a centuries-old legacy. Here, I wasn't just Khaled from the antique shop. I was an explorer, a hero, a friend. I had a place in this world's story. To leave felt like abandoning not just Asil, but a part of myself I had only just discovered. The choice was tearing me in two. With a heavy heart, I knew what I had to do. My home was calling. "Asil, I have to go," I yelled over the hissing of the wraiths. She nodded, her eyes filled with a sad understanding. "Go, Khaled, live your story." She thrust her glowing orb into my hands. "Take this, so a piece of Zicola will always be with you." The orb's light flared, pushing the wraiths back for a crucial second. I turned and ran, clutching the warm, pulsing sphere. I didn't look back. I leaped through the shimmering curtain of light. For a moment I was surrounded by stars, and then my feet hit hot sand. I was back. The two suns were gone, replaced by the single glorious sun of Egypt. In my hand the orb dimmed to a soft, milky white stone. My adventure was over, but it was only the beginning of my story. As the wraiths closed in, I made my choice. My old life felt like a faded photograph. This place, this fight, this was real. "I'm not leaving!" I shouted to a seal. A grin spread across her face. "I was hoping you would say that." The portal behind us began to flicker as the eclipse reached its peak. Together we raised the staff and the orb, and a wave of combined energy, my world's potential and Zicola's magic, erupted from us. The light was blinding, a pure white blast that vaporized the sand wraiths, turning them to dust. As the light faded, the portal to Earth snapped shut with a final shimmer, gone forever. I stood under the two suns, an ache in my heart for the world I left behind, but a greater fire for the new life I had just chosen. My journey wasn't over, it had just begun. No matter the choice, the story doesn't truly end. A story is not a door that closes, but a seed that is planted. If Khaled returned to Egypt, he was no longer the same quiet boy who dreamed of adventure. He was a young man who had seen wonders beyond imagination. He carried the smooth white stone, a seal's orb, in his pocket, a constant secret reminder of the world with two suns. He began to write, to draw, to document everything he remembered. He filled journals with sketches of griffins, maps of floating cities, and the star-like symbols of Zicola. He became a story keeper. He shared his tales not as fact but as fiction, as grand myths for a new generation. People were captivated by his imagination, by the sense of wonder he infused into every word. He inspired others to look at the world with new eyes, to believe in the possibility of magic hiding just beyond the veil of the ordinary. He knew that the connection between worlds wasn't just about physical portals, it was about the stories we share, the curiosity we ignite in others. He honored a seal's legacy by ensuring the story of Zicola would never be forgotten. His life was no longer quiet, it was filled with the purpose of keeping wonder alive in his own world. And if he stayed, if Khaled chose Zicola, his adventure blossomed into a new life. He became a true bridge between worlds, not by traveling between them, but by embodying the spirit of both. He trained with a seal, learning the ways of her magic and her healing arts. He combined his earthly knowledge of history, patterns and logic with Zicola's intuitive magic, becoming a formidable guardian and a wise counselor. He helped the people of Zero understand the legacy of the ancestor who had visited Earth, piecing together a history that had been lost for centuries. He taught them about his world's art, its music, and its stories. In this version of the tale, Khaled found a new home and a new family. He soared on griffins under two suns, explored the deepest secrets of the Whispering Canyons, and stood with a seal as a protector of the land. His presence helped heal the balance of Zicola, and in turn, Zicola healed the part of him that had always felt like something was missing. The storykeeper's promise was fulfilled not by telling the tale, but by living it. Whether at home with his memories or in a new land making more, Khaled's journey teaches us that the greatest adventures change who we are, and that the bravest choice of all is to embrace the story we are meant to live.